In the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed all praise and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As such, we ask Allah to send his peace and blessing upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, upon his entire family, his noble companion, and those who follow him in his footsteps to the day of judgment. Amabah. Brother and sister, I'd like to welcome you to the Plain Truth TV. I'm your host, Abu Muhammad Ali Al Ansari. I'd like to welcome you with Islamic greeting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh wa maghfirah.
Walaikum
So
salam wa
today
rahmatullah.
we have a reverse story with two of our beloved brother Kareem and brother Bruce, who will be sharing their story with us today. And we'll start off first with brother Bruce. If you could introduce yourself to us and tell us little thing about yourself. Go ahead, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, everybody. My name is Bruce Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Okay.
I live in Orlando, Florida now.
Alhamdulillah. Are you married? You working? Do you have any kids?
Yeah, I got two kids.
Okay.
I'm working part-time as a home companion, taking care of elderly, sitting with them
Okay.
in the
Alhamdulillah.
company and doing things they can't do for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are fully grown. My son has four sons, and one of his sons has a son.
Wow. Subhanallah, you got a big family.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. You get to live to see your grandchildren. So that's beautiful.
It seems
Alhamdulillah.
they're trying to start a hockey team because there's no.
Subhanallah. So what about as far from how long you been a Muslim?
I did my shahada in February of 07.
Oh, 07.
And
Okay.
that December, I went to
Mhm.
Hajj.
MashaAllah, man. That's beautiful.
Same
That's
here.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So
MashaAllah.
we'll first start off with the childhood background. If you could please elaborate to us what was your childhood background, where did you grow up, how did you grow up, and what kind of environment you grew up in?
Hmm. It's not very interesting. I grew up in Philly
Mm-hmm.
in a turmoil, dysfunctional home
Mm-hmm.
where my parents drank and fought constantly.
Subhanallah.
Uh, it really messed my little sister up,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of scars that stay with me still.
Subhanallah.
I went through a lot of abuse,
Okay.
but
Understandable.
aside from that,
Mm-hmm.
I just tried to make the best of it.
Alhamdulillah.
After the family broke up, we moved with my grandmother and aunt.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a lot of my good manners and backing from my
Grandparents.
aunt and grandmother. They were
Okay.
Austrian.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. That's beautiful. As far from your previous belief, what kind of belief system did you have? Did you grow up in a Christian, Catholic, or you know, theistic worldview
I
or
was
not?
put in Roman Catholic school,
Okay.
and when I moved in with my grandmother, there was a
Mm-hmm.
Catholic school right around the corner that we walked to.
Okay.
Uh, so I continued there and then through high school.
What kind of
Catholic
belief did you specifically have, like regard to God, Jesus?
The well, it was the St. Joseph nuns
None.
that taught us. Yes,
Okay.
and the priests were Roman Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and they were rough. They were really rough.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that went on in school,
Mm-hmm.
of course, the kids in that neighborhood were bad. They
Mm-hmm.
were different from the kids in the neighborhood where I went to public school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of shocking to me.
Wow.
So we would go to confession, example,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd come out of confession, and
Mm-hmm.
I would be walking along with the kids, and they
Mm-hmm.
would be using foul language and doing all the sins that they just went to confession
Mm-hmm.
to confess, which confused me because the next day we had to go to
Confession again.
church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had to go to church for Holy
Mm-hmm.
Communion. So I'm thinking their souls are dirty already,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to go to confession again. It was just a big joke, but I
Mm-hmm.
took it serious. So
Mm-hmm.
I stayed behind, away from their
Mm-hmm.
sins, because I was dedicated. Uh, I didn't want to be
Seem
tarnished
hypocritical.
after yeah, I believed in it, but there was
Mm-hmm.
something lingering deep
Mm-hmm.
inside me that I just fought with, that just wasn't right. It was a bad feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept it
To
uh,
yourself.
uh, buried
Mm-hmm.
through high school.
Okay.
But when I got out,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I kept searching. I stopped going to church and confession and all that because I just didn't believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
As I grew older, I questioned everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking around to different things and continued with my life,
Mm-hmm.
working, got married. I married my girlfriend from high school,
Mm-hmm.
uh, started raising my kids,
Mm-hmm.
going through a lot of hardship, as most people did. The
Mm-hmm.
jobs left. It was difficult to get work.
Yes.
The years went by. My kids were growing. The turmoil within our family was growing,
Mm-hmm.
and we were separating. My wife and I were going different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was just I lost my job, couldn't get any work.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to get um, some kind of part-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I would have three of them maybe, trying to keep money coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. So anyway, as
At
my
that
kids
moment.
went to their teen years, my we were my wife and I separated, and she moved out,
Mm-hmm.
took the kids with her, and that's when it really started going bad for me. I got work. I
Mm-hmm.
was very determined to keep the house up and try to do good and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew it wasn't going to work to reconnect with my ex.
Okay.
And then she demanded too much that I couldn't, too much. First, she told me she didn't want any money because I couldn't take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Then she said she wanted child support, and she took
Mm-hmm.
me to court and all this, and I couldn't understand what was her problem because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have money until I started working, but I had to catch up on all the back
Yeah.
bills that were coming up. Well,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I worked all through that,
Mm-hmm.
and things started to get really ugly.
Mm-hmm.
She was getting very vindictive. I was getting phone calls from people I didn't know, threatening me, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People were coming up to my door. She had some young people from the neighborhood following me, and they come up and told me
Mm-hmm.
about it, and they were high.
Wow.
And I asked the one kid because I knew his whole family. I says, "Why are you doing this?" She said, "Well, your wife gives us money." She said, "But I like you. You're a nice guy, and you don't deserve this." Because he was so high, he couldn't even stand up.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I just let him talk.
Yeah.
So after that it got ugly. My windows
Mm.
were broke. My car was set on fire.
Wow.
Well, it didn't burn. It just the fire went out, and it wasn't
Wow.
damaged. So
Subhanallah.
I was going to get a gun and start shooting people. These
Wow.
people who were coming up to me, I'm telling you, and
So your life stuff.
these are Catholic people. They're
Wow.
they were so deep into gossip they took matters into their own hands and wanted to punish.
Wow.
without even knowing the whole
Hmm.
truthful
True.
story, which
Yes.
never came out because I didn't tell anybody my dirty wash.
Yeah.
And my wife was spreading stuff
Hmm.
from evil thoughts in her head that weren't
Yeah.
true. It
Hmm.
just, you see what I'm saying? So I left.
Escalated. Okay.
I left.
Understandable. So from that perspective, in that life that you were living while you were going through a lot of tribes, did you believe in a creator, or did you believe at that particular time that Jesus was God or the Son of God? What kind of belief did you have about God, or did you not even believe in God at all?
Oh, I believed in God, but I was so confused because I would pray to the
Mm-hmm.
Blessed Mother to talk to her son. And then I
Mm-hmm.
would say, Jesus, please talk to your father. But when I moved here to Florida,
Mm-hmm.
I was in such a depression
Mm-hmm.
and drunken state
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't even realize I'm going to work drunk and
Wow.
stinking from alcohol. I was just in a stupor.
Wow.
Uh, and I was out in the school field one night and I was so frustrated that I screamed,
Mm-hmm.
who am I supposed to pray to? What do you want from me? I am in a mud hole. I want
Mm-hmm.
you to pull me out and show me where to go
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have a life that's worthwhile anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm saying, who is God? Who are you? Are you Jesus? Who can I pray to?
Mm-hmm.
So
So
I
from
practically begged, and I didn't care if there was anybody. It was late at night. I used to
mm-hmm.
go up to the school fields and jog. I was a runner.
Mm-hmm.
And this one night, I just uh, that's what happened.
Start
And after
asking
that,
for
things
guidance.
started to change. Yeah,
Okay.
things
Yeah.
started to get a little better.
Okay.
Uh,
So
it was a very slow process. It didn't happen real quick. I was
okay.
still struggling and suffering and going from job to job. I lost contact with my kids because I used to call them. And then from moving and their phones were changed, the contact quit.
Wow.
So uh, I worked in the factory, and it was very strange because I had two 12-hour jobs
Mm-hmm.
in different factories. I would sleep on my break time so I
Wow.
could keep working the 12-hour jobs.
Yes.
One job would be 12 hours. And then when that job was off the next day, I had another 12-hour job that I went to. And that was
Wow.
every day, 7 days. And then I met this, I quit the one job because it was
Mm-hmm.
getting to me. The other job hired me on.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a cheese factory made from soybean.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a cleaning crew there, which I
Mm-hmm.
eventually bid into, and they let me do that sanitation job.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of Bosnian workers there.
So that was the
And
first encounter of Muslims.
yes, so the
Okay.
Bosnians were they were unbelievable. They were so nice. And the one fella,
Mm-hmm.
he was younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
many years younger than me, but his attitude, he was so quiet and
Mm-hmm.
polite. He never argued, never raised his voice, and everybody was Mr. Everybody was Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Miss Jane. Yes, Mr. Bruce. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we would talk about religion.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, you know, how come I never heard him curse? And everybody was foul mouthing all over the place, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And one Thanksgiving, we would talk about our
Mm-hmm.
concepts, and he was talking about Islam, which I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So he said to me one day to come to the masjid grounds, and he'll give me a turkey. And when I went, they had some kind of amusement celebration or something. And I asked
Mhm.
them, what is all this? And the one fella, his cousin that worked with us in the factory,
Mhm.
was there also, and he didn't know I was there. He looked at me and he says to his cousin in Bosnian, "What is he doing here?" And he's laughing. He don't know nothing here. So my friend just looked at him and says, "You be quiet and be polite,
Mhm.
because only Allah knows."
Mhm.
Anyway, it went on from there, and I couldn't understand. I had so many questions because he
Mhm.
was able to answer questions, but not
Mhm.
really well because of his
Accent,
English.
English.
Well, the accent I could understand, but his English he didn't know how to explain properly. So he says, "Mr. Bruce, you want to
Mhm.
know? I bring you there again. I will show you a
Yes.
person who can tell you
Mhm.
in better language," and that's what he did. So we went. And Bassam, who held the brother Bassam, who held the classes,
Mhm.
was there, and I spoke with him.
Mhm.
So then I hung out, and we came back another time because he was running the class, and um, I was asking him the questions I would ask the priest.
Mhm. Questions like,
Um, well, about abortion, why is it okay to kill a baby? Is that
mhm.
murder? And he said, no, 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 no. He says there is a period where it up until a certain time
Mhm.
that it's okay, but
Mhm.
after that, no. Uh,
Mhm.
and the other questions that I asked the priest who couldn't answer me, he just said, uh, "Have faith, brother. Have
Mhm.
faith." But when I asked Bassam, he just popped off the answers one after another,
Okay.
and I looked at him surprised because he didn't have any trouble. And I can't even remember what the questions were now because they were irrelevant at
Mhm.
this point. I lost all memory of that because I
Mhm.
was totally satisfied with all the answers.
That's good. That
And
he
at
was
that
giving.
point, I knew that I had found where I belong.
What you looking for? What you've
Hmm.
been asking God to guide you to, correct?
I couldn't believe it. When I spoke with this brother,
Mhm.
uh, I thought to myself,
Mhm.
aha, so now I'm going to know the truth.
Mhm.
After standing in the middle of the field, screaming my lungs out, what do you
Mhm.
want me to do? Why are you punishing me? Why can't I move forward?
Mhm.
Please tell me, show me what you want of me.
Mhm.
And then it all came in together. From
Subhanallah.
there on in, I went to
Mhm.
every class. I watched the movie, The Message,
Mhm.
because I
Mm.
had seen it in the movies when I was a kid.
Mhm.
I used to collect milk bottles and soda bottles and collect money for my
Mhm.
sister and I to go to the movie and candy. I
Mhm.
made enough from doing errands and collecting these bottles to turn them in for the refund. And every week I would do that.
Mhm.
And this movie, The Message,
Mhm.
uh, was playing. But that's not the main film we wanted to see. It was just a side film with it.
Mhm.
And I remembered it. And I said to Bassam, I said, brother, I saw this movie. I said, but I want
Subhanallah.
to see it again because I didn't understand it then.
Yeah.
It was a Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon
Mhm.
him.
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Sorry, son.
And is that's what we were learning.
Yes.
And the movie was it was a visual explanation.
Yes.
And it just whacked me over the head like, pay attention. And I
Yes.
said, my God, I saw this movie. I remembered it because the Anthony Quinn was a star actor in it. He was the
Mhm.
prophet's uncle.
Mhm.
He played the part. So it
Mhm.
really had my attention. And then after that, uh, we would go to iftar Monday and Thursdays, and brother Kareem come over
Mhm.
one night, and he sat right in front of me, and my other friend was sitting there, and he just started talking. So
Right.
we started to become friends, and
Mm-hmm.
he would come over to my house almost
Mm-hmm.
every night
Mm-hmm.
because he was showing us, me
Mm-hmm.
and this other fella,
Mm-hmm.
on this fella's laptop. He
Mm-hmm.
pulled up YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and was showing us Islamic videos and lectures. And I said, "Wow, this is
You were
great."
exposed to
Uh,
something new.
Bruce,
And he said,
should we maybe save that for the end? Maybe
Yes.
because that's
"Whatever."
getting into like your
Okay.
and my
Okay.
story, like
Okay.
intertwining, you know?
Okay.
That's
So
fine.
let's get to a specific question though. So you mentioned you revert at 2007.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you please briefly explain like what led to you become Muslim? As far from what I understand is that your question will answer the question that you asked for God was answered through the brother, and you felt that this was the truth or the answer that you were looking for, which it
Yes.
was satisfactory.
Yes.
Afterward, then you became Muslim, correct?
Yes. I used to go to Wicca meetings. I went to Santeria. I was deep into Santeria
Mm-hmm.
until one of the meetings was scary because things were going on there
Mm-hmm.
from spirits, and I didn't like it. I immediately knew that
Mm-hmm.
something wasn't right with that,
Okay.
and I stopped going. So when I came to the masjid
Mm-hmm.
and spoke with Brother Bassam, and
Mm-hmm.
he answered me, and the atmosphere, it was not like any other. It was peaceful, calm,
Mm-hmm.
inviting,
Mm-hmm.
and it was deliberately set that way
Wow.
for me to give my attention. Well, I thought about it later,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept saying to the brother, I said, when am I going to learn to pray? I said, I want to go down, come
To the
Friday and
practice.
pray.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, no, no, don't be such in a hurry." He said, "There's a lot to learn." And I said, "What's to learn? I'm not going nowhere." I said, I need to pray now. I said, I need to start praying.
Subhanallah.
He looked at me, and he was nervous. And he says, "Well, brother," he said, "this takes time." He says, "Don't rush it." I said, "Look, I'm sorry, but I know I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I live across the street." I said,
Mm-hmm.
"If I lived somewhere else, I would still come because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going anyplace. I want to know more, but I want to start to pray. This is important." So
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm positive. I have to start to pray now that I know." So he
Mm-hmm.
said, "All right, I'll set it up for," and he did. And then he let me know which day it would
Mm-hmm.
be. I just remember it was in February. And I got all, it was hot too, but I got all dressed in my suit and tie. Uh, and nobody was wearing a suit and tie in Florida, even in February. Uh, but that wasn't me. I was going to make a good show for
Mm-hmm.
uh, my creator. It
Yes.
was important, and that was instilled in me through the
Mm-hmm.
Catholic conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had to be
That's
perfectly
so.
dressed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to the uh, masjid
Masjid.
that Friday,
Mm-hmm.
they called after prayer. They called me up for the shahada,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody stopped walking out the door. They all turned around and watched me, and it was scary. But I
Subhanallah.
just focused
Mm-hmm.
on the imam.
Yes.
And Imam Musri, every word he said, I repeated
MashaAllah.
until it was complete.
Alhamdulillah.
And I thought, oh, great. And then I turned around to leave, and everybody
Everyone.
mobbed me, well, hugging me,
MashaAllah.
and hugging me. I was in tears because I thought to myself, this is real.
Yeah.
This is the real deal. It was surprising.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do this in Catholic Church. And when they do, there's
Mm-hmm.
an alternative reason. That's
Mm-hmm.
sneaky, and I've seen it, and experienced it, so I didn't trust it.
Okay.
But this was different. These brothers were all genuinely happy that I
Mhm.
accepted and embraced Islam, and they were there for it.
Alhamdulillah. So another question. After you became Muslim, did you face any challenges or obstacle?
No,
No.
I was approached to go to Hajj
Oh,
by
subhanallah.
by one of the brothers, uh, uh, out of context. He didn't want to be known, and
Mhm.
I says, "Oh no, I can't." "Oh yeah, yeah, don't worry, you can." And I
Mhm.
says, "No, I can't. I have to keep working." Well, I was going through a hard time,
Mhm.
moving different places, and having trouble with my jobs. They
Mhm.
weren't. I wasn't able
Stable.
to keep going, yeah, because the jobs were changing.
Mhm.
So that worried me. So anyway, I even forget back then. I just didn't worry about it.
Mhm.
The brother who sponsored me
Mhm.
uh, asked me some questions, and I answered him, and he says, "Good, you can go to Hajj." I said, "The
Subhanallah.
only debt I have is paying off my car." He
Mhm.
says, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You go
Mhm.
here, you go there, you do this, you do that." He guided me through every step that I needed to go,
Mhm.
in terms of getting passport pictures and my passport,
Mhm.
everything,
Subhanallah.
and the date. And I finally realized that, wow,
I
I'm
am
going,
leaving.
I'm going to leave this town. I'm getting on up
Subhanallah.
out of here. And I said,
Masha-
I'm going to go for it because this is an invitation, especially for me, from Allah.
Mhm. Alhamdulillah. After going through all of that, how was the Hajj experience?
Um, I was very excited,
Mhm.
uh, because my heart was beeping so bad, so fast. But I was also very calm.
Mhm.
The flight was just like riding in a vehicle, and
Subhanallah.
everybody was. I was just in awe, watching and enjoying the experience. And oh, I was telling my one friend,
Mhm.
from South Philly.
Mhm.
Uh, she's Jewish or Christian. I don't even really know what. But I told her I'm going to Hajj, and she said, "You know, you've been brainwashed." She said, "You're going to get killed." She said, "They're." And I said, "Wait a minute, wait a minute. You're taking a trip to Ireland because you want to kiss the Blarney Stone or whatever." And I said, "Don't you realize your life is in danger?" She said, "They're not having a war over there like they are, like you Muslims, like the Muslim." And I says, "No, they might not be having war, but the English and the Irish are fighting. And you're taking a flight there to
Mhm.
kiss the Blarney Stone." And I said, "Some English guy is going to go after an Irish guy on the plane who might be
Mhm.
sitting next to you, and boom, you're dead." And I said, "You don't even know what's going on." And I says, "I'm going to call you." I
When I
said,
get
"I don't have one bit of fear in me. This is going to work fine." And I called
Subhanallah.
her from Mecca. I asked the kids they were young kids that were relatives and worked at the hotel,
Mhm.
and they set it up for me in English so that I could make the call. I emailed as many friends as I could,
Mhm.
and I emailed and called her. And she said, "Where are you?" And I said, "What do you mean, where am I? I'm in Mecca." And she said, "No, you're not." I said, "I am." And I says, "I'll email you also, and I can't talk long. Just wanted to say hi,
Mhm.
and bless you." And she couldn't believe it, because
Subhanallah.
she said to me, "I'm not going to make it. I'm going to be killed. I'm going to die." It was the most fantastic trip I ever
Mhm.
had, and I don't think nothing could match it. When I
Mhm.
got into walk, the
To the
area
Kaaba.
coming into the masjid where the Kaaba was,
Mhm.
everything, it was like I was underwater. Everything was a blur, but the Kaaba was in HD, and
Subhanallah.
I could not believe I was experiencing that.
Mm.
Nothing else was important. So I just followed my nose where the Kaaba was, and I just did what everybody was doing.
Subhanallah. How did you feel?
It felt like I was floating,
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
because everything was so easy. There was nothing uh, difficult.
Mhm. Okay. So the next question. After you became Muslim, how did your family react or friends when they came to find out you became Muslim?
Well, there was so much turmoil and uh, hard feelings back
Mhm.
in Philly. That's why I came to Florida. I left all that because
Mhm.
I wanted to get a gun. I wanted to start hurting people. And I realized that's not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And it scared me. And people weren't talking to me. They were staying away from me
Mhm.
because my whole personality changed,
Mhm.
negative and evil, and people didn't want to be near me.
Mhm.
So I realized that, and I said, I got to change this. I got to
Mhm.
do something drastic. And if I
Mhm.
leave town, it's got to
Mhm.
be out of the whole state.
Mhm.
So
New
I
start.
put deep thought into it and decided to come to Florida. If it failed, it's not that hard to get back because it's not that
Mhm.
far, but
Mhm.
it worked out. I
Alhamdulillah.
went back to visit my neighbors,
Mhm.
and they told me that that was the best they ever saw of me. My health had
Wow.
changed. My
Mhm.
face was
Mhm.
full and clean and happy looking, and that
MashaAllah.
my wife had started so much trouble. Even
Mhm.
after I left the house, rented the house out, she was
Mhm.
still continuing to tell people I was doing this and I was doing, and I wasn't even in that city anymore. And they
Mhm.
said, we always knew you were the good person, and they
Mhm.
were so sorry, and not to come back to Philly. Just keep doing what I did,
Mhm.
because the change in me was so drastically good
Mhm.
that they could see it immediately, and
Alhamdulillah.
that made me feel good.
Alhamdulillah. So, as far from your family, does any of them know you're Muslim, or do you have any Muslim in the family?
I was not able to contact anybody. I lost contact with my son. I was really close with. I
Mhm.
had my son next to me all the time
Mhm.
because when I wasn't working, I was watching him. My
Mhm.
daughter, she went off. She don't even talk to her brother today.
Subhanallah.
I did. This is where my friend Kareem comes in,
Mhm.
because I had pictures that I brought
Mhm.
with me, family albums and all, uh,
Mhm.
and I wanted to get them on the computer,
Mhm.
because I had started working with this fellow who was selling Amway, but it was
Mhm.
under a different name,
Mhm.
a different organization. The whole thing had changed from
Mhm.
when I used to sell it with my wife in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So when I realized what the whole thing was, I told my friend, who happened to be my supervisor where I worked
Mhm.
and met Bosnian people.
Mhm.
He said uh, that I have to get into it because you can make good money. So I gave it
Mhm.
a try, and I had to get a computer, and that's how that started.
Okay.
So that was going okay, but no money was coming through, and then all of a sudden, our hub uh, deal, excuse me, the hub dealer that we were dealing with wanted
Mhm.
all the money. They wanted us to change our format. So everybody dropped out, including
Mhm.
me.
Subhanallah.
And I realized that you can't make money from off of other people doing nothing.
Yes. Absolutely.
So just to cut it short,
Mhm.
uh, now I lost my train of thought.
Your your family, as far from your family knowing you become Muslim, does did any of them, your children or wife, knew?
No, nobody knew. Nobody knew
Okay.
because I was in Florida. The only people that knew were the people in Florida. The friends I made here in Florida
Mhm.
didn't care.
Okay.
They didn't care, but they were a little skeptical.
Okay.
But they
Understandable.
thought so much of me that
Mm-hmm.
it didn't matter.
Okay.
And I didn't tell my son until I was able to meet him, and that's
Mm-hmm.
when Kareem helped me with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
and inshallah we'll
So
get into that in a little bit.
next question would be, what kind of has Islam impacted your life? If yes, what kind of impact has Islam brought to your life?
Uh, there is no comparison to anything else. Uh,
Mm.
Islam, Allah has allowed me
Mm-hmm.
to gather knowledge
Mm.
and have all what's going on today explained so
Mm-hmm.
that I was able to understand the whole picture
Mm.
from the
Subhanallah.
get-go till it's going to end. I
Subhanallah.
can understand what's
Mm.
happening and why.
Mm. Subhanallah. That's profound. As far from your behavior or your social interactions, how did Islam impact those aspects of your life?
Well, a couple of my real good friends really didn't recognize me after a while. I had a one girlfriend that I used to see.
Mm-hmm.
I still have contact with these people, but most of my non-believing friends
Mm-hmm.
just disappeared.
Subhanallah.
It's like Allah just plucked them out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And these two people, including the one that said I was going to be killed going to the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
and another friend who introduced me to her. These two are pretty close friends of mine, and they told me
Mm-hmm.
as we were going through the years after I did my shahada that whatever I did, they like
Mm-hmm.
it and don't
Mashallah.
change. Keep up
Mashallah.
keep doing what I'm doing because the change in me for the good, for the better,
Mm-hmm.
has been so much improved.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't use foul language, and I'm
Alhamdulillah.
trying to get them to stop using it. And she said, I don't believe you. She said, you were worse than me. And I said, no, Liz, I never use foul language around your kids or your grandkids. And you do. And I said, it's not right
Mm.
because
Subhanallah.
she's saying, ha, you hear how she talked to me? And I said, well, where do you think she learned it?
Mm.
And she
Subhanallah.
looked at me and she said, yep, you're right. You're right. And I said, well, I wish you wouldn't use it around me because I don't use it and I don't listen to it. I
Mm.
said, and the Muslims where I'm going for
Mm-hmm.
prayer don't use it. And I says, we don't use the kind of talk, the kind of jargon that you use coming out of church. Oh, Jesus Christ, and all that stuff for Allah. But as an example, I said, we don't talk like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, just think about it. Do you think your prophet Jesus or his mother talked and acted like that?
No.
And she looked at me like stunned.
Mm.
And I said, well, that's Islam. She says, you know what? I don't know if I can do that. But she said, don't you stop. She said,
Mm.
because you are a different person.
Alhamdulillah, man. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
It's great.
That's great. So the next question, next two questions, what kind of advice can you give to people who are seek of truth or people who are thinking about becoming Muslims? What kind of advice can you give them?
Go for it.
Go
The
for it.
only way you could really um, get if you are true
Mm-hmm.
and you really believe that you want to be a Muslim, look into it, study into it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to accept it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have any doubt, it won't
Mm-hmm.
work with you because it
Mm-hmm.
has to come from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get pulled in against your will.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want it, you don't take it.
Yes, absolutely. So you have to be
If you
sincere.
believe that Allah is the God,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it means, the
Mm-hmm.
God, Arabic. And if you believe that and accept it, your
Mm-hmm.
heart will open up automatically because we all have that innate feeling
Mm-hmm.
That's what
And
stopped me from going to church. There was an
subhanallah.
innate feeling that told me
Mm-hmm.
something ain't right.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the priest can't answer my questions, but yet Brother Bossum popped the answers right off with no problem.
Subhanallah. Okay,
I
so the
said,
last question before we close it up for on yours. What kind of advice can you give to the general mass of Muslims
they should follow Islam.
that
The
should follow
Muslims I see are not following Islam like they're supposed to. And
Subhanallah?
why should I be telling them that? I'm
Mm-hmm.
still learning. I need to learn so much. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even I can't even read the Quran in Arabic
Mm-hmm.
like I would like to.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see all the wrong they're doing. It is not Islam the way they're acting. They're not dressing properly.
Mm-hmm.
They're not this isn't everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but it's if it's a mass, a group, a gang, whatever, that's too many. And if I
Yes,
can see it going on, it's not good.
it's not a good look on Islam. Okay,
So
so then you practice Islam.
you should follow Islam. Period. There is uh, no excuse. And
Alhamdulillah.
be careful of your example. Your example is what tells people who you are and what you're about. So if you're in Islam, be a good example of it.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan for the talk and all the information that you share with us. Next, we'll be talking to Brother Kareem. He'll be sharing his story with us. Don't make it too long,
Inshallah.
inshallah. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
inshallah.
please
I
share a little bit about your childhood. Introduce yourself first, then we go to your childhood.
My name is Dennis Jesus Sepulveda.
Okay.
I am 30 going on 31 in November.
Mhm.
Um, I currently live in Florida, but I grew up in Jersey. Um, my upbringing was it's kind of rough.
Mhm.
We lived in a two-story apartment building. We lived
Mhm.
on the second floor.
Okay.
And it's like a roach infested nightmare, that place.
Subhanallah.
And I shared a bunk room with my brother, and my sister had her room. And for the early years of my life, my mom and my father were together,
Mhm.
um, but due to the physical and mental trauma that my father put my mother through,
Mhm.
um, my mother ended up getting a uh, separation from my father,
Mhm.
and she moved with her parents back in Jersey City.
Okay.
Um, so she was the first one to leave, and I think she might have left around like the age of uh, like
7, 10.
oh well, yeah, well she left at some age, and then my brother ended up leaving
Mhm.
shortly thereafter. He left when he was like 14 years old or something like that, because my father, he wasn't I mean, he I guess he tried his best in a way, but
Mhm.
you know he was a very strict father.
Okay.
And so I grew up in a somewhat abusive household.
Mhm.
And that kind of, I feel like that kind of that scarring that it did to me kind of translated over to
The
me being
teenagers.
somewhat antisocial, in school.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when you inflict that type of pain on a child, they can tend to withdraw from people.
Yes.
So I was a very antisocial kid. I always kept to myself. It
Mhm.
wasn't until my later years, like past my 20s, where I really started coming out of my shell.
Exactly. Mhm.
Um, but so I really didn't have much friends when I was
Growing up.
growing up. Yeah.
Okay.
Never even had a girlfriend. So, alhamdulillah,
Subhanallah.
right? Allah saved me in
Yeah.
marriage, right?
Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah. Um, and and I was the total opposite of my brother. My brother was I was I was very much an introvert,
Mm-hmm.
whereas my brother was extrovert. He was very
Uh,
personable, social. He was the one who would party and have all these girlfriends and all this type of stuff, and I was just somebody who was kind of just withdrawn. So anyway, eventually after my mom and my brother had left, I
mhm,
I eventually got sick and tired of it myself,
mhm.
where at the age of 16 I said, you know I- I've had enough of the abuse
The
from my
abuse.
father, and so I went to go live with my grandparents as well. Yeah, everybody was over there: my brother, my mother, myself,
Mhm.
and excuse me. And uh,
And
yeah,
that,
I so go continue. What was the
okay,
next
okay.
question? Because I need to
So,
collect my thoughts.
so just to summarize, basically your childhood was a little bit rough because of the environment that you live in and where the separation between your mom and your dad, and you end up moving with your grandparents, correct?
Right, yeah, and that's when it really started getting a lot better for me.
Mm-hmm.
Was because my grandparents, they really took me kind of as their,
Your
well,
own child.
I would say kind of like their own son, but obviously as their grandson,
Yes.
and they really took care of me. And you know one thing that my grandmother, when I moved in with them, the one thing she really instilled in me was
Mm-hmm.
whenever I would walk through the door
Mm-hmm.
and I, she would greet me. She would say, "Yuto bendiga." It's a Spanish saying. It
Mm-hmm.
means I bless you. And I would respond in kind. I would say bendición, which
Mm-hmm.
means bless you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it wasn't until my later years that I actually,
Like,
after I became Muslim and everything, that I started remembering that. I was like, what was that saying that she never explained to me. I don't know why, but she never explained to me what exactly that meant. But then again, I never
like
asked.
salam alaikum, basically.
I guess in a way, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the difference here, and I guess this is, I guess you can kind of say, this is where Catholicism and Islam kind of divert. I don't know if it's more of a cultural saying or if it's a Catholic saying, but
Mm-hmm.
that saying "Yuto bendiga" is saying
Mm-hmm.
"I bless you," but it's not saying "Dios bendiga," which is
Okay.
"God bless you," right?
Mm-hmm.
So because what intrinsic um, power does a person have to be able to bless another person? Blessings come from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? So, but at that time, I really didn't appreciate that nuance. But I did at least appreciate the fact that my grandmother was thinking, in the sense, in a beautiful sense, to bless me to begin with, right? Whether it came from
Yeah.
her, whether it came from God.
Special. Yeah. She
Um,
view you as someone special,
yeah. So
basically.
so
Okay. Next question. What was your belief system around that time? What kind of belief did you have?
so I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
My father would force every now and then, he would force my sister and I, even though as children
Mm-hmm.
we kind of really don't want to go to church.
Yeah.
At least my family didn't. We see it as a kind of oh man, you're taking our day off, to go to Sunday. Like Sunday is our day. We don't have any school. We want to stay home, spend time
Yeah.
time with our friends or watch TV, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you're dragging us to church. Come on. So I didn't really enjoy it too much, but my dad did force us to go every now and then. But my father was very much a Catholic by label, so he called himself a Catholic, but he still did everything that Christianity forbade.
Mm-hmm.
Drinking of alcohol and eating of pork and things of this nature.
Mm-hmm.
So so religion for me at that time was more of just um,
Culture.
a religious identity, but not a religious way of life, right?
Okay.
Um,
What
so
did you believe
because
though at that
oh
specific time?
well, Um,
Did you
it's
believe in a creator, or did you
I
believe
I
that Jesus
I,
is
I
God?
went
Or
to be honest. These are questions that I didn't really ask myself too much when I
hmm
was younger. I kind of
hmm
just went with the flow. I kind of just I basically didn't question what exactly even what Catholicism was. For example, actually, it's a funny example. It just popped into my mind. There was this just to prove that I had no idea about the distinctions between like Catholicism and or like
Protestant.
regular Christian or something like that.
hmm
Um, there was this girl that I liked in like in the fifth or sixth grade or something like that,
hmm
and I ended up finding out that she was a Christian.
hmm
And so I go to my father and I ask
hmm
my dad, I'm like, Dad, what are we again? I forget. Like, I know we go to church, but what are we again? And he was like you're a Catholic, son, don't you know? What's wrong with you? And
You were
and I
just
and
going
I
with the
and,
flow.
yeah, and I was thinking to myself, I was thinking in my head, I'm gonna become a Christian just like that, so that way I can get the girls to notice me more. If she ever asks me, I'm a Christian. So
Subhanallah.
I was just really just riding the wave wherever it went, and I didn't really have any type of existential questions like asking myself, how did I get here? What is my purpose here? Who created me? Where did I come from? Where am I going? All these type of questions. Is there an afterlife? None of these questions ever entered my mind um, until I moved to my grandparents' place,
Mhm,
and um, I went through a depression phase.
mhm,
Um, so so at that moment in time, I hit a real heavy depression phase because I had graduated high school.
mhm,
I graduated high school, and um, all I was doing,
mhm,
my grandfather would encourage me. He would try to tell me, listen, brother. Listen, Dennis.
mhm.
You know, you have to get a job.
Mhm.
You have to try to start doing things with your life. And
Socialize,
I was
fight
very
it yourself.
I was a very unmotivated child, you know, and and my grandfather was like, I'm a supporter to you all these years, but now you're a man now, you're a young man, you're graduated from high school, you gotta start providing for yourself and moving on with your life, starting your life.
Mhm,
And but I was somebody who was addicted to video games. You know how they say
mhm.
that you can be addicted to video games just like you can be addicted to drugs. It's a very
Yeah,
real thing. And I would sit behind the screen playing video games like um,
hours.
maybe up to 10 hours a day. It's ridiculous.
Subhanallah.
Uh, and and this is when I'm already an adult because I'm done with school. I'm like 18, 19, whatever, I'm 20 years old.
Mhm,
But there was a moment where I felt like something within me was like something within me was not right. I could feel myself as time was passing. I was just like
mhm.
slowly
Going
deteriorating
down.
mentally and spiritually, you know?
Mhm,
And I could feel myself getting into a very deep and dark depression because I was
mhm.
thinking to myself, I'm you know I'm like 20,
What I'm
I'm
gonna do in my
19 or
life.
20 years old,
Mhm,
and I I haven't really done much in my life.
mhm.
I
I done nothing going for myself.
basically, yeah, basically, what do I have to show that my any sort of accomplishments, that
Yeah.
I didn't really have much to show. At least that's what I felt.
Mhm,
So I had a couple of suicidal kind of episodes.
mhm.
One time, I kind of made a. By the way, is it okay if I go on to the
Go ahead. Go
point
ahead.
where talk about how I came to Islam eventually?
Mhm,
So, because I know I'm kind of going on without ends. So eventually, there came a point where I had a moment of depression, an episode of depression so bad that I was like, you know what? Today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to just end it.
Go.
So, and I'm like, okay, so I had the game plan in my mind mapped out and everything. I was like, oh, and this was actually during the time. Let me rewind a little bit. When that depression phase started, I went to my grandmother and I was actually crying. I just I cried my eyes out in front of my brother. My brother has a distinct memory of this, and I was complaining to him and just like laying out all of my emotional troubles that was
Trauma.
plaguing me. And my brother tried to he tried his best to ease the pain, try to talk, advise me and whatnot. But of
Mhm.
course it doesn't just go away like that, right? Just from a simple talk.
Yeah.
So eventually I went to my grandmother, and
Mhm.
my grandmother was the one who kind of started me to really start asking the questions, because
Mhm.
she was like, you know what you need to do?
Mhm.
She was like, you really need to open up the Bible and
Mhm.
start reading the Bible for yourself. You've never read the Bible,
Mhm.
and you really need to connect with Jesus. At the time she
Mhm.
was like, really emphasizing Jesus. And so I tried reading through the Bible.
Mhm.
Um, Bible's a peculiar kind of read. It's very drawn out, kind of dry in
Yeah.
parts, genealogies and all that.
Mhm.
Um, and so um, especially getting through Genesis, it can be take a toll, you know. So I tried reading through it, but it really didn't grab me, uh,
Mhm.
like the Quran would later on. But
Mhm.
so the Bible didn't really grab me. So I read through maybe the first few pages, but there was something about it that I really didn't. It really wasn't speaking to me.
Interest.
It
Mhm.
doesn't speaking to me.
Mhm.
So eventually, I went back to my grandmother, and I was like, is there somebody I could talk to? And she said to talk to the priest,
True.
in like a confessional,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, to kind of like lay everything off my chest. So
Mhm.
I talked with the priest, and I was asking him for some advice, and he
Mhm.
was like, listen, this is what you do. He's like, go home, say so many, Hail Marys, and he gave me the beads and everything like that, and he was like, if you really focus,
Mhm.
on
Saying these
uh
words.
on, on doing these things, you'll feel better, kind of thing.
Mhm.
He's like, don't worry, it'll help you out.
Mhm.
So tried that. Really didn't
Didn't
do
work.
much for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
So but that was the process that kind of got me started with asking
You know,
the questions, religious questions. So that day when I made it a point
your mind.
to, I made up my mind that I kind of had it with the world, right,
Mhm.
with my life. I was like, okay, God, if you exist, I'm
Mhm.
gonna be going to downtown, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna find the highest building I can find,
Mhm.
and if I find access up there to
Mhm.
the roof, I'm jumping. However, if you can prevent me from, you know, finding a place that has access to the rooftop,
Mhm.
then I'll take it as a sign that you exist. It was a silly kind of,
Challenge.
uh, silly kind of, yeah, I guess challenge, I guess you can say,
Mhm.
um, or wager, what have you.
Mhm.
And so I went downtown looking around. I was ideally looking for like a parking garage. I was thinking like that would
Mhm.
be the easiest. So,
Mhm.
you know, by the end of the day, I was searching, but I couldn't find anything. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna splurge on a nice Italian meal for myself. Celebrate the fact that that God saved me, and
Mhm.
me employing this kind of childish kind of reasoning at the time. I was
Mhm.
like, okay, God, you exist, but I need your help in
Find a proper way
kind of
to live.
putting me on your path,
Mhm.
guiding me to I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
So now, just to fast forward a little bit, I did eventually kind of I was still very much in a depression kind of mode, but I kind of left those suicidal thoughts behind me,
Wow.
right?
Mhm.
Now, one day a friend comes up to me and he tells me about this YouTube video. This was like back in the day when YouTube was, just starting out, right?
Sorry. Okay. Mhm.
Like back in the, you know,
Mhm.
uh, way back when, um, and like 2005 or something like that. And he shows me this video. He's like, I have this crazy video I need to show you. It was the assassination of JFK,
Mm.
the video. And not to get into all the details of that, but there was um, when we was re-looking over the footage, it kind of looked like there might have been another shooter, right? Somebody who was in the car, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what got me started. As you know about me, I'm very much a
Mhm.
conspiracy theorist, and that's what kind of got me started on my whole conspiracy journey, was researching
Mhm.
the death of JFK.
Mhm.
So when I don't remember how I stumbled across it, but when I really started researching these type of conspiracy theories and trying to figure out what's going on in the world, because now I felt like I kind of had a little
A
somewhat of a
motivation. A
purpose in my life.
motivation.
I put the
Mhm.
purpose in finding out what's going on in the world. That's where I put all my energy at that time, and that's why I've been
Mhm.
a big conspiracy theorist ever since. So eventually I stumbled upon, I don't remember how it happened, but I stumbled upon the Arrivals. Are you
The
familiar with
rival.
the Arrivals?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at the time I wasn't really aware of the whole Sunni Shia difference or anything like that.
Mhm.
So, but it really intrigued me because it was actually confirming a lot of the research that I had already done
Mhm.
about these elite people in power and things like that who were running the governments behind the scenes and things like this. But then it went further than that. It started talking about end time prophecies,
Yes.
return of Jesus, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking to myself, Jesus is the
Catholic.
God from Christianity, right? Or the prophet from.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then it was talking about an antichrist, the
Mm.
Dajjal, you know.
Mhm.
And so I watched it. I watched through the entire series, and along the way there was these verses from the Quran, and
Mhm.
beautiful golden, italized, lettering, uh, verses from the Quran talking about the time of Sulaiman and the jinn
Vision.
and Harut and Marut,
Mhm.
and things of this and connecting it. And so it really got me looking into the religion of Islam, because I felt like it was that series kind of just made all the pieces fall into place, if you get what I'm saying. It kind of
Yes.
merged the research that I had already been doing, and it made it
Mm.
make sense, and it was kind of coherent with the with what I had already discovered for myself, without the influence of Islam or the teachings of Islam having been put into the picture yet. So that kind of connected things for me.
Mhm.
So but it was strange because I watched the Arrival series,
Mhm.
but um, I
You couldn't.
actually what I wasn't familiar with the Quran
Islam,
itself.
the religion.
Well, I wasn't even familiar with the Quran itself, like because I really didn't think too much past the series. I was thinking to myself, I don't know why it didn't come to my head, but I
It's
didn't
just
think about.
something, some quotations that you just see in
Yeah,
your
I mean,
mind. You just seeing it as a quotation in part of the
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
That's me.
exactly. And I didn't think about reading it outside of the series. Yeah,
Okay.
and it
Mm.
never really entered my mind. Um, and because like what you're saying, I didn't really know anything about Islam either.
Yes.
Because it didn't really refer to Islam by name in that
Yes.
series. I don't think. I mean,
No.
it talks about figures. It talks about
Hmm.
certain figures, but
Hmm.
and it talks about the Quran, but it doesn't really mention Islam by name or really talk about it in any type of depth.
Hmm.
So I didn't really. didn't really understand that it was
Like,
connected to that particular religion.
mm-hmm,
So it wasn't until one day, because I had shared that series with my brother.
mm-hmm,
My brother used to live above me.
mm-hmm.
And I got him on the series, and he was the one who actually started reading into the Quran himself. He was actually interested. After I introduced him to that series, he actually took it upon himself to read the Quran, and
Mm-hmm.
he came to me one day. He's like, "Hey, you know that series, that Arrival series that you showed me. You ever
Mm-hmm.
read you ever actually sat down and read the Quran for yourself, outside of what the series talks about, the verses that it uses?" And I was like, no, I don't even know how to access a Quran. I didn't know how to access it online. I wasn't aware there was a one available. And he was like, yeah, he showed me Quran.com.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, now I definitely got to read that. So
Yeah.
I was reading I was reading the Quran online more and more, but I didn't actually convert, because again, it's one
Mm-hmm.
thing to read the Quran, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
still not introduced to Islam, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
disconnected, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't like come across any type of scholars or students of knowledge or any Muslims at the time to really teach me these things. Now, there came a period when I wanted to change.
Okay.
So I was tired of, my moody depression, my mood swings, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, going in and out of depression. And I just wanted, I kind of felt like if I have a change of environment, a change of
Mm-hmm.
pace, that
Mm-hmm. You're gonna start brand new, fresh.
maybe it'll help me, help me internally.
Okay.
So I decided to move down to Florida with my father.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful timing by the qadr of Allah. It was, subhanAllah, it was absolutely beautiful timing, because it was at that time that
Mm-hmm.
my sister was graduating from high school. She was graduating
Wow.
from high school, and
Mm-hmm.
she was about to leave because she was going off to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so I literally, I think I came literally like a month or two before she finally graduated high school and left. So if I wouldn't
Wow.
have came, I don't know what would have.
You would have
Maybe
missed that. Yeah.
my father might have been in a nursing home a lot sooner.
Uh-huh.
So I was taking care of my father for that period of time,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and uh,
You
now.
met some Muslim at that around that time?
Sorry, what?
Did you meet some Muslim around that time when you moved to Florida?
So we lived in a place called Middleburg, and I was
Mm-hmm.
near
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville, Florida. Now, um, I I don't quite recall how it is that I stumbled upon. I think it was once I went to Florida that I actually started taking my uh, studying into Islam a little deeper. Like I found out about Islam and I started looking into it on my own time, researching it. So I
Mm-hmm.
decided to look up like where's the closest masjid. Now the
Mm-hmm.
closest masjid was like an hour and a half from me, because from Middleburg to
I don't know.
Jacksonville it was like an hour and a half drive. Of course, I didn't have a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I decided to take the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I took the bus all the way down to Jacksonville,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to the masjid,
Mm-hmm.
and there was this African American imam,
Mm-hmm.
the leader of the place, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like, yes, can I help you? And
Are
I
you
was
lost?
like, are you lost? He's like, can I help you? And I'm saying, well, I'm just looking around because I was looking to. I told him that I took my shahada on my own, because I did take
Mm-hmm.
my shahada at the house, but at at that time I was reading a book
Mm-hmm.
by Zarabozo. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Mm-hmm. It's a
oh,
river too
yeah,
also.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He wrote a book
Mm-hmm.
um for a new Muslim. I can't remember the title, but
Mm-hmm.
in there it talked about, and I later learned that I think this hadith is weak or something like that. But he included it in the book, and in the book it states that for your shahada to be, or it's recommended. I don't know if it's in order for your shahada to be accepted, or if it's just a recommended. But it said that you need at least 2 witnesses.
Win it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was under the impression that even though I took my shahada by myself, it really wasn't accepted by Allah. So I had to go to the masjid, you know. So
Yeah.
I needed at least two witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
and I was too shy to like ask my father to be a witness, and then ask a neighbor. You're gonna be like, what do you got me for? What is this ritual you're doing? So I went to the masjid, and so I told him I wanted to take my shahada. He was like, all right. It's like, it's nice to meet you, brother. Right now, we're waiting for, I think it was during Dhuhr or Asr time. It might have been Asr
Mm-hmm.
time that was about to come in. And he was like, if you want to just wait like 20 minutes, prayer is about to come. We're going to pray, and then you can do your shahada afterwards.
Okay.
So he told me to just, sit in the prayer room and just wait. And if you want to, read some pamphlets, I think he gave me some pamphlets to read, and that's what I was doing. So I'm reading the pamphlet, and this big black fella walks in, right? Big black brother.
Mm-hmm.
And man, this guy was like a mountain, and and I was looking at him, and he kind of had this different demeanor that I wasn't used to.
Mm-hmm.
And he just walked in. He walked. I guess he already had wudu. He just walked straight in, and he was doing the 2 sunnah rakats. Yeah, and
Well,
all I could all I could say is I was captivated because he went straight into prayer, and he was going through the motions and everything, and he was doing it silently to himself. But I was just observing, and I'm thinking to myself, subhanallah, what is this that he's doing? And it was moving me. I could tell it was affecting me, like just watching him, just watching what he's doing. The him like being so focused and so intent on what he was doing at that particular time. You could tell he was just focused and very into it. But it wasn't until he went into sujood that I I just it was like the floodgates. The way I described it before, it's kind of like the floodgates kind of opened up for me, and the tears I just broke down crying, because I felt like it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Somebody who, if you was to find him in a dark alley, he would beat you to a pulp. This huge guy, and yet he's willing to. There's something with his religion that he's willing to humble himself to down to the ground like that. And it was just, for me, it was just like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Experience.
And so after that, after I had my moment, I did my shahada. The brothers greeted me and everything, and I was eager, as is every Muslim when they first become a Muslim. They have that real zeal, that strong, that really strong zeal to learn as much as you can, and just like
practice
run like the Flash with it,
Yeah.
So I was asking this one brother. I think he used to be Jewish. At least he looked Jewish, and there's a very nice white brother. And I was asking him like 20 questions, and he was like, brother, slow down. He's like, you gotta think of the religion as a kind of like a cake, if you was to eat the whole cake at once, you're gonna get sick. But if you take it piece by piece, you enjoy it, you savor it, and that's the way Islam is. You take it slowly, but surely, you take baby steps. And he's like, right now you got to focus on the prayer. Just I'll give you some resources for that, and whenever you come back, we can go from there. Once you start with the prayer and learn Surah Al-Fatiha and all this stuff. So Yeah. Oh, and
So
then
that's
there
how
was
you
there was
became
this one
Muslim.
there was this one sister that there was this one sister there. I wasn't sure of the etiquettes in terms of like the
How to
Muslim
deal with
brother
interact.
sister dynamic, you know. So I was extending my hand to shake her hand,
Mm-hmm.
and she was looking at me and she's like, "Oh, sorry, in Islam we don't shake hands with men."
Opposite.
And and I felt a little awkward. I was like, "Okay, what's that about?" At the time, I was that kind of weirded me out at first. I didn't really understand it. But yeah, yeah, everything else was gravy after that. Yeah,
Alhamdulillah. So after you became Muslim, how did you feel? What kind of experience did you feel at that moment?
Oh, well, like I alluded to, even before I actually took the shahada at the
Okay.
masjid, when I saw that,
Mm-hmm.
when I observed the prayer, that was like the most blissful experience I probably ever had till this day. It's probably one of my most significant emotional moments that I've ever had. But of course, ever since I became Muslim, I've had well, one thing I could say is that when I took the Shahada, for some reason, it felt different when I did take it in public versus when I took it by myself. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I took it in public, at the masjid, I
Mm-hmm.
felt this kind of ease of burden, this weight,
Burden just removed
kind
from
of
your
just
shoulder.
yeah, lifting up off my shoulders, and it felt like a literal lifting, not like a figurative lifting. I felt like literally like like it was weird. I felt like literally like I was lighter, you know. Strange. And whether it was Allah wiping away my bad deeds or something, I don't know. But
Allah.
but ever since it was once I took my shahada at the masjid that wallahi my depression disappeared overnight.
Wow,
Uh,
subhanallah. That's,
so yeah, it was. So I guess I was right, right? The
um,
change of scenery, that change of environment
yeah,
that I was
alhamdulillah,
thinking would be for the best. It was for the best.
alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
So the next one, did you face any challenges after you become Muslim? Any obstacle practicing or any habit that you had difficulty leaving or any lifestyle?
Um, so the only real difference from when I became Muslim, in terms of interactions with people, was the most significant was with my father.
Mm-hmm.
So especially when I started to grow the beard, he would always harass me to cut the beard. He never liked it. He would be like, "Man, cut that thing off. What are you doing growing it? That thing doesn't look good on you." And I was like, please, leave it be. I'm trying to practice religion, and one of the things that we have to do is grow a beard. But he would constantly bother me over that, and he would also try to talk me um, into going back to Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
going back to Catholicism, talking about Jesus and how he's the Son of God, and how
Therefore,
if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then you're not gonna enter heaven, you know. And he's like, so he was just trying every which way to convince me. So aside from my dad, kind of pestering me in his own unique kind of way, may Allah bless him. Um, yeah, I really didn't have um, many challenges.
okay. What about your family as far from your mom and your grandparents? Did they find out you became Muslim? How did they react?
Well, regarding that, actually, since I left New
Mm-hmm.
Jersey and went down to Florida, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until literally a week ago that I actually visited them again. So it's
Nice.
been 10 years, almost 10 years that I actually, before I actually went to see them. Now, when I did go to see them, aside from, me, of course, getting criticized for waiting so long
Yeah.
and visiting them, um, and
Everyone was
it,
happy.
it, it was more so my grandfather. My grandfather
Mm-hmm.
was kind of poking fun
Mm-hmm.
because my grandfather was like, he was like, you do realize that we're living in 2019, right? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? He was like, well, you have that whole, bushy beard
Beer.
going on. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is sorry, I trimmed it up. And he's like, you got the whole bushy beard going on, and he's like, you got to get with the times. Technology is evolving and everything, progressing and everything. We're no longer riding on camels. We can't nowadays. I could tell. My grandfather. He's very much a jokester. So I know he was just joking with it.
Joking with.
And Bruce knows that because I had him on video chat with him. So he was very much just kidding. But yeah, everybody was pretty fine with it. Nobody really objected to the. Oh, there was a time when I had my aunt and my uncle, who I initially had them on as friends on Facebook many years back, many years. Um, and they actually told me off in Messenger or something like that about becoming Muslim, saying that my uncle was saying like I can't wait to see you on the news when you blow yourself up or something like that, and he said something really extreme like that, and he blocked me, and then my aunt, she I don't remember what she said, but she didn't really have the best things to say either. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
Apart
that's
from
pretty
your
much it.
immediate family, everyone just respected your choice, basically.
Yeah. I
Correct.
mean, yeah. I
And
would
your
say so.
brother, what happened to your brother? Because he was researching before you. What happened
Yeah,
to him?
yeah. So, my brother, he's a complicated story, but long story short, my brother, he's the type of guy who wants to. He feels like he's um on his own personal journey for truth. He doesn't really believe that, even though he's looked into Islam and he's looked into Christianity and maybe other types of religions and stuff like that, he really believes that one has to find a personal truth, something that's true to themselves, that's outside, that doesn't really exist in any particular religion. So yeah,
Having
he never accepted Islam. He learned uh, something here and there from it, but he's really kind of like on his quest for his own personal truth, quote unquote.
okay,
So
okay. So the next question would be, what kind of has Islam impact your life? If yes, what kind of impact did Islam bring into your life?
uh impact wise,
Mm-hmm.
well, it changed me in terms of my mannerisms. Um, Definitely, wholeheartedly. I was much more attentive to my father after the fact, um, and although it took me so long to visit my grandparents again and family up there, but the way I was
Mm-hmm.
before with my mother, I was very kind of negligent with her when she would call me. I really didn't answer her calls, to respond to her with any sort
Mm-hmm.
of immediacy.
Mm-hmm.
And like I told you, I was really just kind of withdrawn to myself and just playing video games. Um, and even though now I regret it after the fact, I really regret the way I kind of was with her. And when I went to visit her the other day, I gave her a level of affection and attention that wallahi I would have gave her 10 years ago. So
Alhamdulillah.
it's
Alhamdulillah. That's
definitely, in
beautiful.
terms of my akhlaq and mannerisms and whatnot, it's really transformed me
Okay,
in that right.
let me really.
And of course, it's given me like I said, it's given me a very much a internal peace that I wasn't able to find anywhere else. Yeah,
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
mashallah. Alhamdulillah.
So, what kind of advice can you give to seekers of truth or people who are thinking about reverting to Islam?
So, um, I would say, first of all, you have to be sincere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Whenever you're searching for the truth, you have to you have to I'm losing my train of thought now. But anyway, I would say there's for the atheist,
Mm-hmm.
there's good reasons for why we believe in God. We have strong philosophical arguments for why God exists. The universe must have had a cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't create itself, so there must
Mm-hmm.
be a creator.
Mm-hmm.
And this and if you're searching for a religion, you want to find one that where god god makes sense in that religion.
Mm-hmm.
If God is described as a monkey with 10 heads, doesn't really
I know.
doesn't really God
Mm-hmm.
is great and above, beyond any of these things. So you want to find something that makes sense to the rational mind and that there's evidence for. And so this concept of the Trinity, that God is three and one at the same time, even though that's kind of a logical contradiction,
Mm-hmm.
um, it, in Islam, something that's the most beautiful aspect about it is something that we have. It's called Tawheed. The oneness of Allah in all respects, in terms of His names and attributes, in terms of His lordship, and things
Mm-hmm.
like this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you won't find in any other religion, and it's the only thing that really makes sense, because this the universe and the cosmos, and when you look into it, it has such a amazing precision and beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And it just comes to mind that this has to be the result of one magnificent creator, because if there was more than one, then you would have really just
That is the
a
universe.
a mess. It would be chaotic.
Yeah.
So um so I mean, as long as you're sincere, and even
Mm-hmm.
if you don't believe if you don't even if you don't believe in God, you know
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hurt to humble yourself and still seek,
Oh,
you know,
God.
seek for guidance. If Even if you don't believe that there's a God out there, if you it doesn't hurt to still ask,
I
because
understand.
he could still respond if he does exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So I guess that will be the final story here with Brother Kareem and Brother Bruce. So we'll get into how did you two guys meet up and what transpired when y'all met up. Bruce, do you want to go first, or does Kareem
Well,
want to go?
yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
I started to say,
Mm-hmm.
when we do iftar, this
Mm-hmm.
one night, Kareem was there at the
Mm-hmm.
table, and we were all eating outside because it was
Mm-hmm.
nice weather, of course. And he just started talking. Uh, he We went to a friend's house,
Mm-hmm.
and he opened up this fella's laptop and
Mm-hmm.
pulled up YouTube and was showing us Islamic uh, um,
Lectures.
I don't, lectures.
It
It was very interesting, and I thought, wow,
it was a
I wanted.
series called the Light Series. It was called the Light Series.
That's what it was,
Yeah.
The light
and that
series.
the light series, yes,
Light series. Okay.
Yes. Um.
and that caught my eye because
Mm-hmm.
it was very informative.
Mm-hmm.
And the other brother, he he wasn't interested. He said to me at one time when Karim wasn't around, he said, "Oh, that's all he does is pull up that stuff on."
On
In other
YouTube.
words, he was agitated by it, but
Mm-hmm.
I liked it because
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it was informative,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I wanted. I wanted to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So he would come over to my house,
Mm-hmm.
and because I had a computer all set up with my TV,
Mm-hmm.
and we would watch it on the YouTube. He would pull up lectures, and he would pull up all these programs from the Light series,
Mm-hmm.
which describes that was
Uh.
Margaret,
Oh.
which tells of what events are brewing in the
Mm-hmm.
world today and why
Mm-hmm.
in the
I know that.
terms of Islam,
Mm-hmm.
and how Islam is struggling
Mm-hmm.
against the enemies. of
Mhm.
Islam, where
Mhm.
all that comes from. And this
Mhm.
is what we were doing all this time.
Mhm.
Now, I came to Florida in '86. I
Mhm.
lost contact with my family around 90, 91.
Mhm.
That was the end of it. I saw my son when I went down
Mhm.
went back to Philly for my father's
Really?
funeral.
Mhm. Subhanallah.
And that was the
Uh,
end of it.
So,
yeah.
Brother Kareem?
So so yeah, that was I was very much, somebody who was very eager to. I've always been somebody who was eager to share my findings.
Yes.
Uh, any information that I come across, I'm always I want to show the next person.
Mhm.
And I'm not into convincing anybody, but just sharing it to begin with. If you want to believe it, that's up to you. If you don't want to, so when he showed an interest,
Mhm.
and I started showing him the video, it kind of became a regular habit where I would, I had his number, and I would
Mhm.
call him up, and I would be like, "Hey, you're free,"
I got
and
some
so
good news.
yeah, yeah, and so when my I was taking care of my father, we
Mhm.
I lived in Winter Park. He still lived in Orlando near the masjid that we attend.
Mhm.
We would always attend. So whenever I would get, what I would do is I would feed my father, give him his
Mhm.
medication or whatever,
Mhm.
um, put him on like a movie or something like that,
Mhm.
and uh, and if he went to sleep, if he was knocked out,
Mhm.
um, I would call up Bruce. I would be like, "Hey, you're free. you know, can I swing by?
I
And
couldn't wait. I couldn't
yeah,
wait
yeah,
for him to come
and
over.
I couldn't wait to get over there to to pull up the videos, because it was a series that was actually very similar to the Arrivals, but it was much more informative and didn't have as much of the you know sect stuff. It's very much more on the Sunni side of things instead of the Shia.
It's called the
So
light.
the Light series, but it's a
Light.
controversial series, and if you watch it, you will get in trouble like I did with the FBI. So I don't recommend it.
Well, a lot of the
that's a that's a
events
that's a
that
whole nother
happened,
that's a
he
whole
mentioned
nother
Light.
about the
thing.
assassination of President Kennedy. I lived through all of this. And the minute
Oh,
I heard that, I knew there was something wrong within our government
wow.
because you're not, you're the president and you're riding in uh, a state within this country and you're murdered. How does
Yeah.
that happen? I watched a demonstration of a building being imploded. It was
Mhm.
new technology that
Mhm.
they had televised, and they made sure there was enough time for everybody to gather and watch the TV so that they would see this new technology of implosion. So when
Mm.
the towers came down, I knew uh, exactly what they did. They deliberately brought the towers down. I knew it without
Mm.
even seeing it because
Subhanallah.
I knew about the technology.
Mm.
So I lived through these things, and it would come up in explanation
Mhm.
in my face
Mhm.
what Kareem would bring up on YouTube. So
Mhm.
I was immensely engrossed in this information because all the puzzle pieces just sorted out and fell into place. And I said,
Subhan-
"You're onto something here." I said, "This is this." I said, "This is what's going on." The
Definitely.
understanding with with your intelligent logic, if you
Mhm.
use it,
Mhm.
Allah will open your eyes.
Absolutely.
And
You know,
Absolutely.
this is how I learned.
and
Alhamdulillah.
just to add something, and not to get too far off topic after this, but you know, something something I would say is that it's not necessary to know this information. Um, first and foremost, learning the Quran and learning the Sunnah,
Mhm.
and um, learning about the companions of the Prophet ﷺ,
Wallahu alam.
and the classical scholars like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, and those who followed after him. That's
Mhm.
that takes precedence over any sort of conspiracy theory or anything that's going on in the world today, because that's going to establish yourself, that connection between you and Allah,
I
and
agree.
that's what's eventually going to lead you to either Jannah or Jahannam, right? If you decide to
No.
disobey.
Mhm.
Now, but what I would say is that learning this information, and I'm sure Bruce can agree, is that when you are privy to this type of information,
Mhm.
this type of uh, you know quote unquote occult knowledge, something that's not very known to the public, it's kind of hidden, it's secretive. Um,
Mhm.
um, it it gives you it does fill in the picture more.
Mhm.
It makes the picture complete, and it gives you more of a resolve in your
Mhm.
religion, if anything,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
now you realize that these people who are running things behind the scenes, they're
Mhm.
actually they're actually the enemy, and they are the followers of Iblis, right? Shaitan.
Exactly.
And so if Shaitan exists, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most definitely exists. And
Well,
there
Mhm.
is
it
this
confirmed my belief
there
and made
is
it
this
stronger
very
in
much
my
there
fear of
is
Allah, so that I am not disobedient to His law.
yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
it really
It's very
establishes
much understood and loved.
So
um
it's a way of awakening to be
Yes,
aware of the
yes,
yeah,
environment that you live in, the time period you live in, and what's going on with the life that we're in right now.
well, it
yes.
very much cements this idea of good versus evil. It is very much a struggle
Reality.
between the believers and the followers of Iblis,
It's
and
fun.
those who want to succumb to his whispers and his callings, and yeah. So, so to go back to just to conclude on this, inshallah.
Mhm.
Um, what Bruce was going to talk about was the fact that how he came to get reunited with uh, his son and his grandson
Mhm.
was um, I ended up calling a private detective,
Mhm.
and that's kind of really what solidified our relationship more than anything.
Mhm.
This friendship that we've had over the years was the fact that you know after 25 years of him not um, seeing
Having contact.
his son
Mhm.
or his grandson, and at this
My
point,
son was
he was
21 when I saw him last.
and he
Uh-huh.
was also a great grandfather at this point,
Yeah.
because his grandson had a son. Um, but yeah, I hired this private detective. He found him, and they've been in contact ever since. Mashallah.
MashaAllah. That's beautiful, man.
Now
You know,
he's 47.
SubhanAllah.
I
Wow.
saw him when he was just 44. I
SubhanAllah.
went to visit.
Alhamdulillah.
Oh, slipped. And also, I saw my daughter. And
Alhamdulillah.
she
That's
she she said, "Oh, I'm not in the mood," which is exactly what I expected from her. But my son was very upset, almost to tears. So I had to calm him down and tell him it's okay. I
yeah.
got you.
Alhamdulillah, man.
Because
That's
we never
beautiful.
had, yes. And
And it's
this is
okay.
all through the blessing of Allah.
Alhamdulillah. Definitely. Definitely right.
And when I saw my
So,
grandson, it was uh, like I knew him the whole life, his whole life, because he was
SubhanAllah.
28
Wow.
and his son was just born,
yep.
SubhanAllah.
and uh, and now he'll be 30,
MashaAllah.
and we talk
MashaAllah.
almost every day. He says, "Grandpop, Grandpop, let me tell you, it's like he doesn't have anybody but me. He has no."
MashaAllah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So before we close it out here, any final comments? And I do want to thank both of you guys for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. And I hope the believer will learn some lesson through the things that you went through. So before we close it out, does anyone have any comment before we close it out?
Alhamdulillah.
What about you, Brother
Great.
Kareem?
Yeah, I think on that note, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And Brother Bruce, thank you very much. Subhanaka wa bihamdi. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وأستغفرك وأتوب إليه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Salam.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Be safe.